Do you think the goal in life is to avoid getting hurt? The goal of life is to live. Getting hurt is just the price of admission, my friend.
Welcome to the Dreams of Consciousness podcast. If you'd be so kind, would you mind introducing yourself?
Hey, I'm Scott Burns of Cavernlight.
And Scott, how would you describe the music of Cavernlight?
I would describe our music as doom, post-metal, ambient, a little bit of shoegaze on this album. It's a personal expression of what we're feeling and dealing with inside at the time that we're writing the stuff.
And what are those feelings? If you had to describe your music in words other than genres, how would you describe your music in terms of the feelings that you're channeling into your music and the feelings that you want your listeners to experience?
I think on this newest album, what we're really focusing on more so was kind of hatred, an ugliness, a darkness. I think on the previous album, it was a lot more kind of depressive, and we were sick of being depressed, and now it was time to be angrier. It was that, and there's moments of, maybe a little bit more sadness, a little bit more just kind of that blah feeling that you get sometimes when you're just stressed out and overworked and not dealing with things properly in your life. It was a way for us to get that frustration out that we were dealing with, of just not being able to make things go your way sometimes in life, and dealing with a lot of mental health issues and stuff like that.
Would you say Cavernlight is ultimately a cathartic exercise? Is that ultimately the goal for why you guys do what you do?
Yeah, I would say so. Cavernlight generally ends up being for us first as members, so that, I guess the idea has always kind of been, we're going to write and record albums, and then for us, and if people connect to it when we put it out, that's great. If you don't, that's okay too. Like, it's really about creating something for us that we can look back on at this time and at a certain time in life and be like, yeah, that that was cool, or that sucked, or whatever. A way to reflect.
So when we describe Cavernlight as doom, is it possible for your band to be doom and not necessarily a metal band? Like, would you say that Cavernlight is a metal band per se?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't necessarily see us as a quote unquote metal band. When I think of metal, I think of generally faster, death metal or black metal or power metal, those kind of things. To me, Cavernlight is doom in the sense of like slow, downtrodden, heavy, but it's not necessarily like we have to follow this funeral doom format or something like that. That's not something that we're interested in. Cavernlight is just more of an expression of just being heavy or trying to be heavy, and integrating that with different music genres and stuff that we like. I'm largely into noise music, ambient music, folk, different things like that. Some of the other guys have different tastes, like Brandon, our bass player, he enjoys electronic music. Caleb likes, admittedly, more death metal and stuff like that. But I mean, we all come from different places and are trying to make something of our own. Obviously there's heavy influences from bands like Neurosis. I think that's never a conscious effort, but it's just something that comes out when you've listened to a band for 20 years of your life. Like it's bound to happen at some point.
Now, when we talk about doom and the feeling of doom, you say heavy, but is the pace also very important when you're when you're trying to get across these feelings of doom, is it important that you keep these very slow tempos?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like to an extent, fast music to me is just, I enjoy it from time to time, but it's not something that I generally am looking to do or play myself. So I think it's important to keep a certain pace. You know, someone like Elliott Smith is great at writing a sad song that's fast, but I'm not Elliott Smith. It's not happening, man. Like, it's gonna stay slow. I personally connect with slower music a lot better. Dealing with having ADHD and having your brain just constantly like wired and going bonkers someday if you forget to take your meds, like ambient music is going to help me relax and come into a better place in my mind. And I think that's, just one of the reasons why playing quote unquote doom music or post metal or whatever you want to call our band, like that's just one more reason why the music sounds the way it does, is because I need something that's going to make me feel good at the end of the day when I'm playing it. I don't want to write music or play music that's gonna just make me feel like crap. Like, there's no need for that. If I want to do that, I'll just go to work,
For people who aren't familiar with the band, can you tell me a little bit about when you started and why you decided to put this together?
Sure. Cavernlight in some form has been around probably the past 15 years or so. At first, it was just Adam, drummer. Adam and I just working on songs together. We've been friends for a very long time and had been playing for years. Then finally we decided, hey, maybe we should actually record some of this stuff and put it out for people to listen to. So it's never been a full-time project for us, but it's something that we enjoyed doing very much. Yeah.
Now, originally, as you alluded to, the project wasn't meant to be a recording or performing project. Is that correct?
Yeah, there never really was much intention to perform. That was something that just came later as we played more and had more people involved in the band besides just Adam and I. Eventually being like, hey, let's get out and play some shows and stuff like that. But it's always just been more of a studio focus with everyone in the band and having their own personal lives and everything that they're into with owning businesses or just working extra hard or family life or whatever. It's never been a main focus for us.
Can you tell me a little bit about how songs start for you guys? Like what the genesis of a Cavernlight song would be?
Yeah. So sometimes it's a jam, but sometimes it's just mostly me just writing a lot of the riffs and stuff on, say, like acoustic guitar or something like that, and then kind of reworking it and bringing it to the band later, and everyone adding their own flavors and styles to things. A lot of the songs too, when on this album, when they were recorded, I had the intentions to add more to the songs as far as noise or synthesizers or stuff like that. So they never really knew exactly what was going to come out at the end of the song once it was finished in studio. And then once I finished it at home at my space, then they're like, oh, all right. That's where we're at now.
Are most of the noise elements and the ambient parts created by you?
Yeah. There's some stuff that we did in studio with, guitars and stuff like that, and doing a little bit of messing around with electronics, but a lot of it ends up me sitting in space, like just working off the synthesizers and doing all the noise and stuff. Yeah, it's kind of a way for me to really focus on what I want to get as far as the sound into the songs. When we're writing them, we don't always necessarily have the most time to do that. So, and also like practice spaces and stuff like that, being a louder band and trying to incorporate a good PA in this setup, just not always a thing.
And as you're coming up with riffs and beginning songs, how complete are the songs before you bring them to the rest of the band?
They're usually pretty close to complete. Pretty much the main format's down when they're brought to the band. You know, there's always changes to be made and ideas that other people bring forward and, you know, work those in. The part that isn't finished usually is like the vocal melodies or rhythms and like the lyrics. Like that's something that Adam tends to bring to the party later on in the process of really honing that stuff in and help make the songs what they are.
So you mentioned this latest album. It's called As I Cast Ruin Upon the Lens That Reveals My Every Flaw. And it was released on May 13th of 2022 through Translation Lost Records. Can you tell me a little bit about how this album started and when you started working on it?
This album started as we were finishing the last album. A couple of the songs actually had already been written. There was a little bit of work that was done to them to kind of fix them up where they needed to be.
Did you go into this album specifically wanting to do anything different from your previous albums? You mentioned some of the feelings on this album were a little bit more angry than what you had done previously.
Yeah. Yeah, as far as the songwriting goes for this stuff, there was more intention of being angry. It was kind of a dark, heavy period in some of our lives, especially mine at that time. Adam and I were working together at a screen printing shop in town. So our lives were together via work. I was helping out with his label and band stuff, and then I had my own personal things going on too. So the songwriting definitely took on that vibe of all the things that were going on at the time. I did have intentions to move away from a looser song structure as a previous album kind of had and move into a more traditional song structure with repeating parts and stuff, which is not something that we've done a whole lot, but kind of wanted to explore adding, I guess, a little bit more of a pop element into things, as much as that can really be said. It was definitely a conscious effort this time to expand on that stuff.
Yeah, that was my first impression when listening to this album, that this is a much more song-oriented album. How much of that was a result of playing more shows and performing live more than you had done during the earlier incarnation of the band?
I think, playing live, it did help a little bit of that. I wanted there to be a little bit more familiarity with the songs, as far as like people being like, oh yeah, this is what's coming up, like this is what's going on here. I think that part of it too was it was just time to move on from what we were doing. That's why there's more singing on the album too than there had been in any of the other albums, really. I was at a point of like, hey, we're playing more shows. Throat kind of hurts. Maybe I should do a little bit of singing, bring a different element to the band, making, I don't know. It was just time to change things. Kind of move on from, there's a lot less black metal influence on this album. I think it's still there to an extent, but it just helped. It was just time to move on.
Now, was that a difficult transition to move away from the screaming to more clean vocals?
I mean, it was a little bit of a process, just because I had never really sang before. That was something I've been working on for a while, trying to figure out how that all works. But I think in the end, it made sense, especially for the first track. Like, I don't think it would have given off the right vibe if I wouldn't have done any singing on that, versus like if I would have just been screaming. I don't think that it would have conveyed the change between the first half and the second half of the song.
This is the first album with Caleb on guitar, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Can you tell me a little bit about how he joined the band and how you know him or knew him previous to the band?
So our old guitar player, Pat, had to move on in his life, and kind of leave the band between albums. And we met Caleb through my buddy Matt, who I used to be in a couple bands with years ago, Cock ESP and Sauce Party, some noise stuff that I used to do. And he was actually just a coworker of my friend Matt's, and gave him a try. Dude knows how to play guitar really well. He knows how to bring it. And we needed someone to kind of change up the sound a little bit, bring a little bit more focus to everything. Caleb helped shape the sound too, more so on this album. Between him and Scott Evans, recording the album at Electrical, kind of got more of a larger sound and a little less gritty, but still impactful sound. And yeah, Caleb's a good guy. Really like having him in the band.
Mental
So let's talk about Scott Evans and his work on recording the album. I guess, you already mentioned this, but tell me a little bit about recording at Electrical Audio and why you chose to go there.
I think we chose Electrical just because, well, one, there's been, obviously, I mean, anything that comes out of that place sounds phenomenal, but
Steve Albini's studio, right?
yeah, correct. I think part of it was too is like it's in the Midwest, and that's the Midwest ends up being a really large influence on us and our music, and I think keeping that local as it is. I mean, it's 3 hours for us, but it's still local enough where we can go get the album sounding like we want, and then still be able to go home after the week and not have to drive cross country once we're finished. And bringing Scott Evans in was just kind of a no-brainer. The work that Scott does is always phenomenal as well, and it was great having him around because he gave us little ideas here or there for songs, but really just was able to capture, what we wanted to do. Working with Scott, is in a funny way, it's kind of like, it's almost like working with dad, you're like, okay, all right. Yeah, you're right. Yep. We got to do it that way. You don't want to listen to dad, but he's like, he's right.
Now, is that in terms of his experience, or is there actually an age difference?
I mean, there's not much of an age difference. It's just experience, and it's the respect for Scott that we have. I met Scott through working at festivals with Adam, having Kowloon City come and play, and talking to him backstage, and he's a smart guy. He knows what he's doing. He'll let you know, and I'm okay with that. Sometimes you need to, just check yourself and listen to someone else and be like, this is why this part's going to sound huge. It's not because we put 10 tracks of distorted guitar on that. That's because we, threw in a couple cleaner tracks of guitar, and that's what's going to make it sound louder. And you're like, all right, Scott, you know what you're doing.
So I'm not actually that familiar with his band, Kowloon City. Was it specifically his own music why you wanted to work with him, or was it some of the other bands that he's recorded over the years?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, their albums always sound great, and having a lot of respect for his band as far as the gear and stuff that they use, and then the sounds that they get out of them with using such minimal setups is always really impressive. I mean, Scott's worked with some great bands, but it was just the right person to work with, it was familiar, enough for us that it just kind of made sense.
And this was the first time you worked with him, right?
Yeah, that's correct. We worked with Adam Tucker on the last album, and Tucker made that album shine too. Did a wonderful job on that. We just wanted to kind of take it to the next level on this one, loud, clean, punchy, but just it's fun working with different people.
Loud, clean, punchy. Is that, would you say that's what Scott brought to this album, and that's what makes this album different from your previous recordings?
I would say so, yeah. I think the album before was some of those things as well, but we just, like I said, we just wanted it more refined and wanted a more, maybe in a way, consumable album for people. I think it was just stepping up everywhere, and everything that we did was kind of important for us on this album. It just, I don't know, it made the whole experience a lot better too. Another thing that I could add into about electrical audio was working there was great because it gave us a chance to have Dan McAdam come down and record The Black Crow with us, which was a single that we did before this last full length. And Dan used to play in a band called Songs of Haya with Jason Molina. And what was really great about having Dan there was, for Adam and I personally, like Songs of Haya, Jason Molina projects, Magnolia Electric Company, whatever project he was doing at the time. Jason's a huge influence on us as people and musically. So with having Dan there, it was great because he would share stories with us of like, hey, when we recorded this track and in this studio, like we were standing over here and Jason was on the other side of the room doing this. And I think that was another reason why recording at Electrical was so special to us. It really added to the experience of just like having a space that has had such great musicians in, and then being able to like share stories and talk about, adventures in recording and all the fun little things that come with it. And, the stories of what happened after recording or, what happened during sessions and stuff like that.
That's great.
Yeah.
So the single was recorded in the same sessions as this album. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah. It was recorded in the same sessions. It was something that Adam and I had felt really strongly about, making sure like, hey, let's get in there and record a song, a cover of a Song the Highest song that we can just put out and, make it feel special. And then being able to have William Scharf like have artwork for it too was pretty awesome. The artwork that he had was actually from a letter he had sent Jason Molina at one time, and he ended up letting us use that for the single, which was pretty fantastic to have so many things that were like tied together and really special to us, all within recording another album as well.
So I have to mention that the album was mastered by Brad Boatwright, just because it seems like every few weeks I mention that an album is mastered by Brad Boatwright. He's quite prolific within the underground and the heavy music scene. For you guys specifically, how did Brad get involved with you, and what would you say he brought to the sound of the album?
To be completely honest, I don't know. Like all of a sudden, so the great thing about working with Adam sometimes is that something will just happen and you had no idea what was going to happen. All of a sudden one day I was talking to him and he was like, hey, Brad's going to be mastering the album. All right, man, cool. Like that's just kind of how it works out. He did a great job on the album. I finally got to hear the vinyl version when it came out, and like it sounds great. Like I love the clarity that's in there. Brad also is working with Caleb's other band, Choke, which is pretty great. They did some stuff together where Caleb ended up recording the Choke album at his studio in Green Bay, Wisconsin, which is Caleb's death metal project. And then Kurt Blue Lake did the mixing, and then Brad did the mastering. So that album is could be awesome. It punches you in the face. Like It's wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, just hearing Kurt Ballou and Brad Boatwright, I can hear my computer speakers sizzling already.
Yeah. Plus, you throw in that HM2 guitar stuff that
exactly.
Caleb loves, and you know what you're in for.
So we should mention the label that's releasing this, just because if people didn't know, Adam, your drummer, is actually behind Gilead Media, who released your previous album. How did Translation Lost get involved with this release?
Translation Lost got involved because with everything that went on over the last couple of years, as far as the pandemic and stuff like that, Adam loves to keep his plate full and probably overflowing most of the time. So when all the pandemic stuff hit, and the story of not being able to get records made, and some big artist is pressing 10 million copies or whatever the heck it is, like, we ended up taking the album over to Drew and asking him if he would be interested in releasing it, because it just felt like, to me, Gilead and Translation Lost kind of seemed like, family, as far as like they could be brothers as far as the bands go and how the labels are and are ran. And I met Drew years ago at Hellfest and really liked him and thought he was a really nice guy. And it just seemed like a good fit. And with timing and all that stuff, it just seemed to work out better. Though the album did get finished in like, I think I finished up in like April or May of 2020, and it still took quite a while to get out. But I mean, you can't blame any label really nowadays for vinyl coming out late. Let's be honest.
Would you say it's a matter of resources, and that's why Translation Lost were more suited to handling all the logistical and supply chain problems that have been occurring in the last couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, it's that, and Adam also needed to take a step back from the band and focus on some of the other things that were going on in his life and with his label. So kind of like I was saying before, having Translation Loss put out the album kind of made sense too, because it's just one of those things, like, you want someone that and trust and like respect to handle putting out an album for you, and Translation Loss is that people for us. And it was one of those things just kind of made sense. We're happy to be there.
So the album was actually recorded at the end of 2019. Was the delay largely due to issues with the label and getting the physical releases out?
It was that. So we recorded the album. We recorded all the main stuff in 2019, all the guitars and vocals and drums and all that was all done live at Electrical Audio. But the album needed to be finished. And that's where I kind of come in generally when the album, like when the main stuff is all tracked, I come in and finish everything up at my home, using different instruments and VSTs and different things like that. So I took a break from October when we recorded it, and then in January started working on the album again. I think I spent 4 months or so on and off just doing the things that needed to be done to the album. So in there, you get that part of the album done, then it's on to mixing and working with Scott to get that stuff done. I don't even remember anymore, to be honest, when everything was finished, because once it gets in Brad's hands, I think there was one change we had to have done, and that was about it, on Brad's end of it. But then it was, what are we going to do with this now? We wanted to get it out at a certain point, and, get it out early 2020, but it just wasn't going to happen with how life was at that time for pressing plants for Gilead, and then having to talk to Drew about it and getting Translation Loss on board and all that stuff. So in the end, I'm fine with it. It's out and it's in the hands of people that want to hear it, and I'm happy with that.
And now that the album is out, what do you guys have planned? What does the next year and a half look like for you guys?
Being a band that doesn't play out live a lot, there's not a whole heck of a lot planned, to be honest. Caleb is busy. He's on tour with Ghost Bath right now, filling in for them. I think today is their last day on tour. Then we have our bass player, Brandon. He does a lot of social media stuff. Adam is kind of stepped away from the band for now, and also is opening up another record shop, running Gilead. Everyone's kind of got stuff going on. So I continue to work on, music here and there, and if we make another album in a couple of years, great. If it takes 5-10 years, it'll happen. Like I said, it's a project for us and a way for us to express ourselves and our needs. So unfortunately, we're not the traditional band that's like, hey, let's get out there and play some shows and sell some t-shirts and, get our music out for everyone. It's more of a personal process.
And when do you feel you'll be comfortable writing new music? when do you think you'll feel the itch again?
It'll come when it comes. I've worked on stuff here or there, but life's different now. A lot of changes have gone on in the last couple of years. When we record an album, there's a lot of emotional stuff that goes into it. Adam and I have been friends for over 15 years. So there's a lot of stuff that comes out during those processes, and working with each other, we have to make sure that we're being, respectful, and at the same time, we're also trying to get out all of our feelings with life. And that's really hard to do sometimes when you're putting yourself in this place of anger, sorrow, sadness, all these different things. And to be in that spot and then be around people you care about is not necessarily the easiest thing to do sometimes. So it'll all happen when it happens.
That's a good place to leave off. The second Cavernlight album is called As I Cast Ruin Upon the Lens That Reveals My Every Flaw, and it is out now through Translation Loss Records. Scott, what's the best way to get this album? How can people order it?
I would say the best way to get it is to hit up Translation Loss or check out their local record store if they still have one, and check it out on Translation Loss's Bandcamp. You can order through there or their website. Yeah.
Do you want to say anything about the vinyl versions that Translation Loss is putting out?
I honestly don't.
I believe, I don't know what the numbers are.
Yeah, I don't even remember them, to be honest, either. I'm not going to lie. I'm terrible with this shit.
I believe there are two limited edition vinyl
colors,
specially colored.
Yeah.
And I think the numbers are one is 200 and one is 300, something like that.
Sure. Dude. I am not the guy for all this stuff. I'm sorry, man.
No worries. Long story short, we don't really know But there are two special vinyl versions, and if you go to the Translation Loss web store, you'll be able to see them both and order them both.
Absolutely.
Hopefully.
Yeah, they're there.
Hopefully they're not sold out.
They're there.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think they are yet, but who knows?
And if people want to follow Cavernlight online and keep up to date with what you guys are doing, what's the best way to do that?
Instagram or Facebook. We update from time to time, but social media isn't necessarily our thing. It's kind of an interesting place in life to be on. Not necessarily somewhere we like to hang out all that much, but yeah, if you want to go to Facebook or Instagram, we're on there.
Is there anything else you want to say?
Thanks for having me on today, and hope you guys enjoy the album. There's a lot of dark, heavy themes on there, and we'd love it if you explore those thoughts and ideas, but at the same time, like, for us, mental health is very important. So if you find yourself needing help, reach out to someone and talk to someone. It's okay to do these things. It's okay to be vulnerable, and it's okay to need help or to help someone else. I think that's something that we would like to see a lot more in the metal scene, is people being accepting of one another and see what they're going through and what you're going through, and being able to talk to it and know that mental health is not something to be ashamed of.
Excellent. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.